keep going like this. Does this show off my sweater well? Hi, my name is Kirsten. This is the Paper Knits Podcast, episode 3. If you're back after seeing my other ones, thanks for joining me again. If you're new here, hi. You can find me on Instagram as paper.knits and Ravelry as thisispaperknits, and here on YouTube as Paper Knits. So yeah, I am primarily a knitter, and that's mostly what I am going to be sharing in my podcast. Something that's become a very important part of my life, and I love to be able to talk about it with people who also understand how much I love knitting. So because they also really love knitting. Yeah, we're gonna chat about a couple of my finished objects today. I almost very close to being finished object that I'm trying to finish in the next 2 days, and yeah, a couple other projects that I'm planning for. So this is my main finished object today. This is the Clarke Pullover by Jane Richmond. I have knit a couple of her patterns. They're like very well written patterns. She has like a chart at the back that has all the numbers and then blanks in the actual pattern, so you can fill in which number you need. And so if it's like cast on 72 stitches, or the next size up is 76 stitches or 80 stitches, then you just like write in the number that you need. So then when it comes to actually like reading through the pattern, it's like very slick, and I really like that. I always like highlight the size that I need to do anyways, but it's just like it's very tidy, which I like. And also there's a nice chart that has all of the measurements for every size, and so that's easy, I find, to, you know, if I have to make an adjustment for like the bicep circumference or something, it's like really easy just to compare them, I guess, to have them all like laid out in a nice chart instead of, you know, all these numbers with commas in between them, and you have to like count like, hey, wait, 1, 2, which I'm size 5, okay, then here. I've like definitely made mistakes before because I like picked the wrong number, just like wasn't paying attention and chose the wrong one of a string of numbers, right? So anyways, I don't know if all of her patterns are that way. I'm guessing they are, but yeah, highly recommend. It's nice. So yeah, so this is a Raglan. The pattern's written for long sleeves. I just did the short sleeves for summer. I knit it with Ancient Arts Nettle Soft DK. Ancient Arts is like my very favorite. This was yarn that I had in stash that I got from like de-stash from somebody. So I was like that. When I ever see Ancient Arts on a de-stash, I always try and buy it. I figured out where, last time I'd mentioned that I had 2 different kind of these like bluey gray colors, and I couldn't remember where the other one came from, but I did then remember when I looked back through my projects, I had knit a sweater for my sister-in-law in that yarn, and that was just the leftovers. And that I happened to have this light color is called Irish Linen, and then the bluish gray stripe is called Russian Silver Blue. So I was gonna maybe alternate the stripes with the other blue color, but like they weren't quite different enough. I keep saying blue, they mostly look gray. I was gonna alternate them, but I didn't think they were quite different enough to actually make it like distinct enough, so I didn't. Anyways, I'm really happy with how this turned out. The nettle yarn is oh yeah, okay, so it's 60% merino, fine merino, 32% nettle. So the nettle is like from like a stinging nettle plant, and it's harvested, I guess, like similarly to getting linen from flax, but it's more environmentally friendly apparently, has similar properties. The description on the Ancient Arts website mentions that it like gives luster and drape, and like it absolutely did. Like it's kind of like has a bit of like a silky kind of feel to it, and yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. So this is how much, I think I have a little bit more of the Russian Silver Blue somewhere, but this is all I had left of the Irish Linen, and so I kind of like, I knit most of the body, and then I like went back and did a sleeve and like tried to figure out how long I wanted the sleeve to be, and then I did the neckband, and then I went back and finished the length when I realized I only had this much left. I was like, it's not going to be enough for the ribbing at the hem. So I did it in the Marshland Silver Blue. It was pretty quick. I said in my previous episode about the Raglan, I've only knit a couple of Raglans before. I don't know why, but they're like very difficult for me. I can't just like, oh yeah, I just know my size and my numbers and I'll just knit until it fits me. Part of what I've discovered is tricky for me is, when am I on an increase round? When am I on just a knit plain round? What happens then when you stop increasing for the sleeves, but you're still increasing for the body? And then keeping track of that. I like for sure messed it up a few times. So I would like miss doing an increase at one of the Raglan edges, come back around and be like, oh shoot, where am I at? Or I'd like put it down and then like when I go to pick it back up again, be like, oh yeah, I don't remember what I'm doing. The beginning of round was at the front left, but the change of color was at the back sleeve Raglan. And so then that I was finding tricky, and it's like it probably wouldn't have mattered where the beginning of round was. In my head, I could have just designated the beginning of round at the color change. But I didn't want to like, I just wanted to follow the pattern, and the pattern's very well written. It was very clear. I just was like, I'm gonna mess it up, and then I did a few times. I had to like go back and like fake a couple of increases that I'd missed. I probably should have done a couple of more sleeve increases. You know, I was saying about like checking the size of the like upper arm measurement. I probably could have added a couple more of those increases in just to like give me a little bit more ease in the sleeve, but it's fine. I just knit this sleeve, you know, a couple of like 1.5 inches maybe, with just straight without any decreases or anything. And they're fine. They're not too tight. But I probably could have used like just a little bit more ease there. I did a tubular bind off on all the edges, which was really nice. Yeah, just lays very nicely. I probably would have gone back and re-picked up my neckline, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. There's a couple of stitches that when I picked them up, they just like pulled funny. I went back and like, you know, pulled each leg of the knit stitches all the way over to one of the Raglans and kind of like hid it in there. There was like a little bit of an extra loop, and I actually ended up doing that at the underarms too. Usually I take like scrap yarn and like weave it to kind of try and close up those holes. No matter how hard I try, like I like looked up another YouTube video like how to prevent holes at the underarm, but no, there's just like a giant gaping hole where I picked up for the sleeve. So if anybody has like a really good hack for that, please share, because I find that part of a sweater like one of my least favorite parts. So I went back and like did some fixing, and so I'm happy with how it turned out, but it's just like having to go back and do that feels tedious. If like there's just a way to do it from the get-go, like how you pick up your stitches for your sleeve that doesn't make those holes, then that would be helpful. I do the thing where you like pick up the bar and then decrease it. Like so you end up picking up an extra stitch and then decrease it. But it just doesn't seem to really work the best way that all of the tutorials tell me that it's supposed to. So anyways, Clarke Pullover by Jane Richmond. Really happy with it. I think I'll get a lot of wear out of it. It's a good length for me. Yeah, I think it'll be a nice summer top. I don't have a lot of knit summer things. I made a tank top last year, but I don't know if I've ever worn it. I need to dig it out. I don't even know where it is in my house. I need to dig it out and see if I like it or not. That one I think is with pure linen, and it's a bit crisp. It's like it's supposed to be like 31 degrees today. I don't know if I'm going to keep it on all day because I don't want to be sweaty and then have to wash it again before I leave next, like on the weekend for Montana. So I don't know how easy breezy and drapey and cooling it really is from the nettle. It's still wool. It's mostly wool, and wool is supposed to breathe too, and also it's also insulating. So trying to find that balance. On 31 degrees, I don't think I need a wool top on, even if it has nettle in it. it's probably not, but I'm sitting in my cold basement right now and it's perfect. It's great. So I still have some, that entire other ball then of the, well, it's not a whole ball. I don't know how much is left of the other color, the other bluish gray color. And I might make another, which bralette was it? One of Jessie May's bralettes. Framework, maybe? I made one last summer. I wear it all the time. Like, just like, it's like the best thing for around the house. It provides not bad support, considering I made a double folded band and added an elastic, like a thick elastic in it, which like helps a ton. Anyways, it's with DK, and so I don't have a lot of DK yarn, but this was DK, and so I might make one with that and use up that skein. Yeah. So one of my FOs this week is my Musselburgh hat. It's patterned by Zolda Teague. It's an interesting hat construction. You start at the top and increase out, and then measure your gauge as you go. So then you can figure out how many stitches you need to increase to, and then knit a big long tube, and then you decrease it again, and then you end up with this like weird blob, and then turn one end into the other, and then you have a hat. I very quickly discovered that my hat was going to be too big, like my circumference of my hat is too big, and I just kept going. I just like needed a knitting round and round in a circle project, and that's what I got. And now I may have an unwearable hat. I had considered trying to felt it a little bit, just for fun, like why not, to shrink it up a little bit, but it's too big around and therefore also too short. So I used up like pretty much every single gram of this skein, and then, but because so much yarn was used to make it too big, there wasn't enough to actually like make the length. And so when you're supposed to be able to, you know, fold it up like this, like that's a teeny weeny beanie, you know? So this will be a bit slouchier. I don't know what's gonna happen with it yet. I tried it on, but I'd mess up my hair, so I did take a silly picture. I'll see if it's like an embarrassing picture, so I'll see if I'll put that up or not, but yes. So the yarn was lovely. This is the Fiber Co. Cumbria Fingering. The color's called Blackbeck. And it's kind of this like tealy green, black. It reminds me of like a mallard duck color, kind of color. It's not like quite as green as that. It's really lovely. Very fuzzy. It would make like a very warm hat, especially if I was actually able to like double fold the brim. But the yarn was great. I would like to use it again. I think the regular version of it is worsted, and then this is the fingering base version, and it was quite lovely. So I'd like to see what some of the other colors look like, just because this one was quite interesting. So like it has a lot of like dimension to it, right? It's not just like a flat color. So anyways, there's one project done. It's been a while since I knit a flop, so maybe it's okay. I hate ripping back, you know, and I like often have to, because my gauge swatches lie, and I am trying to be so precise when I'm, you know, trying to do my gauge. So like even with this, as I was like knitting the top of it, I was like being very precise. I think I mentioned last time that I was doing it on Magic Loop, and then I switched to like a 16-inch circular, and that's where my gauge changed. And so yeah, you know, they like recommend, it's like, okay, if you're gonna gauge, if you normally knit while you're watching TV drinking a glass of wine, then like that's how you should also knit your gauge swatch, so that it's like the most accurate representation of your knitting. I often find that I'm like trying to be very precise when I'm doing the gauge swatch, and then my knitting is tighter. And so then when I get to go actually knit the project, then my gauge loosens up, and then it's too big, and then I have to rip it out, and then yes, it's a tale as old as time. I've done it multiple times. But there we go, muscle bar hat. Something that is very exciting that's coming up is I'm leaving this weekend to go to Montana for the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Big Sky Country Retreat. I think that's what it's called. So I'm really looking forward to that. I signed up for this retreat 100% on a whim, thinking there was no chance whatsoever that I was going to get in. It was kind of like you had to, it was first come, first serve. I happened to see the like post about it like pretty soon after, like the application opened or whatever, like pretty soon after. And so, and then I saw that the grocery girls were going to be there, and I was like, oh, that'll be so fun. I want to do that. Oh, this costs a lot of money. I'm going to pretend that it doesn't. So I signed up for it. And then, I don't know, a couple days later, like, got the invoice saying that I had got a spot. Like, here, please, 50% down. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And so this has been a plan for me since February. It was definitely part of my, like, my baby died. Life is shit. I should just do whatever the hell I want. And sometimes that might mean that people make maybe some reckless decisions. I'm not saying this was reckless. It was like maybe a little bit like fiscally irresponsible. But like, this is not destructive behavior for me to like go to a knitting retreat in Montana. If this is how I'm dealing with my grief, then like, great. So there's been a lot of anticipation about this. I have been gearing up for it for a long time. I'm really looking forward to it. It's definitely out of my comfort zone. Meeting new people is not my strength. But I also love the idea about 20 or 30 people getting together just because they all love to knit. I think that's fun. There isn't going to be, like, there aren't classes or workshops or anything. It's going to be mostly just chill, relaxing time, I think. Really good food apparently, and on the one day we're going into town to Farmer's Daughter Fibers and get to shop and do like a dye workshop kind of thing. I guess that's a workshop. We're gonna dye some yarn, which will be cool, and there's yoga. Might be doing something. I think there's another event the next day, but anyways, it's mostly like pretty chill. I'm also planning to go to Target and go to Ulta, like hit up some of these stores that we don't have in Canada. That's what Canadians do when they go to the States, is they shop. We used to have Target in Canada, and then it flopped, and so then it went away. So anyways, I'm looking forward to it. It's something that's like it's just solely for me, right? And I think that's important. So yeah, I'm going to try and take lots of pictures and videos. We'll try and get over my fear of being seen by anybody else as I'm trying to take a video, whatever. So, because yeah, I want to be able to share more about it when I'm back. So my other big whip that I'm desperately trying to finish, I was like frantically knitting on it yesterday, and when I went to bed, I was like, oh no, my wrists, like my arms were sore. I was overdoing it a little bit. But I want to get this done before I go to Montana. Like, that was the point of why I made it, is that I'm using yarn from Farmer's Daughter Fibers, so that when I go to Farmer's Daughter Fibers retreat, I'm like, have something that I made with their yarn. So I'm almost done. Let me tell you what it is first, and then I'll tell you more about it. This is the Birds of a Feather shawl by Andrew Mowry. I'm knitting it with the Surrey alpaca base called Odang from Farmer's Daughter Fibers. This is the color Highwayman, and then the other one is the Yak Yarnery Yakety Yak Sock in Nautical Disaster. So that one is a merino yak nylon blend, and then this one is an alpaca silk. Yeah. It's quite large. I I feel like this might be my biggest, it might end up being my biggest shawl that I've made. So I'm just at the border. I have like 4 more stripe sections I think to go. And then it'll be done. I'm not going to block it. I'm going to steam it. I think I will finish it. This is where I was last time. I hadn't touched it in a while because I needed to rip out my ranunculus so that I could use the rest of this yarn. So I knew when I started this is that I was planning to rip out the ranunculus to use the yarn for this instead. And so I just had to get around to actually doing that, right? And it was it took a bit. I wore it enough times that like the underarms had like felted just ever so slightly, right? And like probably I should have washed it because there was definitely like deodorant in the underarms. And so one of them I could not get it out, and so I just had to snip it a little bit, and I just didn't bother keeping the felted deodorant yarn. But otherwise I took some footage of me with the as I was unraveling it, so I'll try and add some of that in. But I soaked it and hung it to dry, and it was good as new. So that's nice. And I will get more use out of this than the ranunculus. I was working on it the other night at my kid's soccer practice, and I got it was like windy and my yarn was blowing everywhere, and it was windy because weather front was moving in. I don't think it actually ever rained, but it looked like big rain clouds. And I got like 2 rows of it knit, and then I was like, no, we're done now. And I like wrapped myself in my shawl, my partially knit shawl, because I was very cold. I was like quite miserable by the end of that hour of soccer. The kids were running around. They were fine. I was sitting not prepared and was cold. Although maybe I was prepared because I had my knitting with me. So anyways, I think it's gonna be very lovely once it's done. I probably don't need it in Montana. I keep checking the weather for next week. It's gonna be like 24 maybe. But in the evenings and whatever, and I wear a shawl almost every day in the winter, so this will be lovely. I really like my little stitch stoppers. They're little avocados, except that I wish that one of them didn't have the seed in it so that they could fit together. But yeah, they're cute. Anyways, I have a couple more days left to finish this. I think I will get it done. I have one more sewing project that I wanted to try and finish before I go. I wanted to finish this before I go. And this. I wanted to film a podcast before I went. It's like, okay, I'm running out of time of doing things. But I can knit this when my kids are around. I can't really sew when my kids are around. I find that very stressful. And obviously I cannot film a podcast when my kids are around. I'm sure some people do. I cannot. My children would not be letting me do that. So I said last time that I wanted to try and finish my quilt that I was working on before my daughter's birthday in December. And I cast on another square. I just picked a random one. This is how much I've done, and it was so frustrating. This was a much more complicated cable than the last one. The last one was mostly ribbing. It wasn't actually that much cabling. This one I think has a cable on every other row, and they're tricky cables. It's 4/1 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And yeah, it's slow going. It's tedious. I have to be very precise. I have to use a cable needle, which I try and not do, but this one it's I can't not use one. Haven't figured that out yet. And so yeah, I was not excited about working on it. This was a made up deadline that I made for myself, that I wanted to finish it by December. I have 16 more blocks to make. So that might be an unreasonable goal anyways, but I want to enjoy it. I feel like the point, I got it in my head that I wanted to have this done as sort of a like, I don't know, like a memorial kind of project or something. But I don't need to make it that. And if I'm not enjoying it, like that's not the point, right? For me to be force myself to do these tricky cables so that I finish it by, you know, what would have been my baby's birthday. Like that's not the point. Like the point was that it was supposed to be something that was like meditative for me, and that I could be marking her monthly, kind of like, oh, now she would have been 6 months old, now she would have been 7 months old. It's like working on, like started working on it like on the 19th of the month, and then, you know, take a couple days to try and finish the square. So I started this, I'm pretty sure I started this on May 19th. And it's coming quickly up to June 19th. I have to do more than one square a month. It's not going to happen. So I think I need to shift gears there a little bit. It's like, so it's hard for me to switch gears when I get it in my head that I have a plan, then I need to make that plan happen. But if I'm not enjoying this plan, then I don't think that's a good idea for me. My other idea for a project to honor Beth with, I don't know. I don't like that wording either. I don't know what it is exactly. I think it's just, and I want it to be something that's helpful for me in my grief journey. There we go. That's what it is. I just had to talk it out loud. I had to process it out loud. Something that is tangible that I'm working on throughout the year as part of my grief journey. And that's what it is. So maybe a like frustrating knitting project is like a good metaphor for that, but I don't want it to be that. I want it to be something that I'm enjoying. So I had also, I think that I had found this pattern before she was born. We knew what her name was going to be. Her middle name was Rowan. And so I'd come across a sweater pattern called the Rowan cardigan, I think. It's like a cabled, all over cabled cardigan. More cables. Is this a good idea? I'm not sure. I had bought all of the yarn that I needed for it. Maybe, I'm gonna find out. When did I buy that? It was another one of my like panic buys kind of thing, like in like very quickly after she died, and like I just bought a whole bunch of yarn. Yeah, I did. I bought my daughter died on Boxing Day. Boxing Day, everything's on sale on Boxing Day. And so I bought a whole bunch of yarn that day. But yeah, it's just like that day was, shit, right? We came home from the hospital, and I told my husband, let's stop at this random Shoppers Drug Mart at this random mall that's close to our house. I want some Christmas chocolate. It's on sale today. I want some. And we went into Shoppers Drug Mart on Boxing Day at a mall. It was like very busy, and like the store was a mess, and most of the chocolate was gone. And I just kept grabbing things. I just like kept handing him things to buy, and we just like bought a whole bunch of like random Christmas chocolate that was on sale. And then that night I'm normally like, when I buy yarn, I like know exactly what I'm gonna knit with it, and then whether or not I actually ever do that is like up in the air. But I usually always buy it with a project in mind, because I want to make sure I have enough, and want to, it's just like helpful as I like planning projects and stuff, and making purchases. I'm like very like particular about what I buy and how much it's gonna cost and all these things. Not that day apparently. I bought 3 sweater quantities worth of yarn. But somehow I planned 3 projects that day. And yeah, 2 of them were with the River City Yarns Epic, and then this one, the Rowan cardigan. So anyways, I'll show you what the yarn is. It's not like, it's Briggs and Little. It's like, I get, yay, Canadian yarn, that's exciting. It's not like fancy yarn. So this is the Heritage base, which is worsted. It's rustic, and I think it'll be a great cabled cardigan. I ordered it from Needles in the Hay. Yeah, Needles in the Hay. And I ordered every single skein that they had of this color, and it wasn't quite enough, and so I had to track down some more. I ended up going in person to Stash Lounge in Calgary, and I like brought one of my skeins in, and then yeah, they only had a couple, I think, and bought the rest that I needed. Because I'm like, okay, if this is going to take me a long time, I didn't want to get till November and be like, oh no, I ran out of yarn. Oh yeah, this yarn was made, you know, a long time ago, and now the next dye lot is very different. I ran into that issue with those other sweater quantities of yarn that I purchased, which I'll talk about another day. But I did not buy enough, and then the dye lot changed, and then there's this whole thing. I'll tell you later. But anyways, the point of this is I might switch gears and try making this Rowan cardigan instead. And probably another like largely cabled item is not, maybe if I'm not super vibing with the cables right now, I don't know why I would do that, but there's more meaning behind that one, I guess, for me, because of when I bought the yarn and when I planned the project, and then that it's, you know, I chose the project because of the name. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Another random thing that I worked on this week, which was very spontaneous. I was like ordering some stuff random stuff off of Amazon that I but like wanted for my trip, like some travel containers and a new, like another, like a purse, but like I was going to use it as like a purse slash project bag. Yeah, a couple other random things. But the other things that I bought was a miniature thermal printing label maker, and I bought some inserts for I think it's A6 binder maybe, and I organized my knitting needles. I missed some binders there. Okay. I was getting overwhelmed about my needle organization. I mostly use interchangeable needles, but I've recently started buying fixed circulars, and I've been liking those better. But I had, okay, this was all of my, like, you know, things that had all of my needles in it. And so you're like sifting through them, and it's like super tiny writing. Like, okay, 2.5 millimeters. Okay, that's not what I need. Okay, 2.25. Okay. And it's just like, it was feeling stressful for me. I have this case, which is covered in bits of yarn, that has my interchangeables in it, which mostly actually has my old Knit Picks ones in them, because the slots I find are too big for the needles actually, and so then they slide out everywhere. I have this great plan that I want to try and sew myself one, but I just have very specific ideas in my mind about what I want it to look like, and I don't know how to translate that into making my own sewing pattern. So anyways, I saw somebody, I think on Instagram,
using these little folders, but then they had like crocheted them together. I was like, oh, that's cool, I should do that. And then I was like, no, I will never do that. I will never get around to actually doing that. I put them in a binder. So I have the little labels on them for each size. I have them organized by size and then by length. And this isn't all of them. They don't all fit. This like barely closes. But I'm going to take out, I think, some of the bigger ones and get another folder for some of the bigger ones. But it makes me so happy. So I just finished it. I haven't actually like had to put it to use, but I'm imagining that it's going to be easier for me than like rifling through all of the little, you know, holders that they come in. And like sometimes they're in my bin down here, and sometimes they're just shoved in a project bag, and sometimes they're in a pile upstairs on my desk. And now they have a home and they're labeled nicely. So that was an unnecessary and fun project that I worked on this week. Another thing is that I'm planning my projects for, like, I'm trying to decide what yarn I want to buy when I'm in Montana. And I know that I want to buy some Dream State, some Spin Cycle Dream State. I've never actually seen Spin Cycle in person at a store. There aren't any, I don't have any local stores that carry it. And so I always have to order it online, which is fine. But seeing it in person and like seeing all the colors and like seeing how the different skeins look, because like, you know, each skein, even that are the same color, like the same colorway, like always look different. So getting to actually like pick that out. I haven't knit with Dream State before. So my plan is to buy the Farmer's Daughter Fiber Pishkin base, which is non-superwash Montana and Wyoming Rambouillet. So I also like the idea of buying like it's like a local yarn to them then, right? And so buying that while I'm there and then pairing that up with a Dream State to make something. So there are a couple, Candace, the owner of Farmer's Daughter, has a couple of patterns that I've saved. Trying to decide if I want to, like, I mostly have been saving patterns for like cowls and stuff. But I'm trying to decide if I actually want to buy enough for sweater quantity. I was looking through, I really want to make the, just a second. Okay, this is the Marshland sweater in the Strange Brew book. I really want to make that sweater, not those colors. And so I was trying to decide if I wanted to buy, that one is knit, the sample in the book is knit with Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. And I think that this, the Pishkin, I just looked it up. Is that what it is? I think it's a like a heavy DK light worsted, I think. So I think that that could work. I don't know if I want to commit to, you know, that sweater has like 6 colors in it, I think. My process of like picking colors for a colorwork sweater is long and laborious. And so me trying to do that in the store, I just said that I want to see the Spin Cycle in person, and I want to see the other colors in person too. They have so many colorways for that base, for the Pishkin. And so I want to be able to see them all in person, but trying to plan out the colors when there's multiple colors in a colorwork sweater, and, you know, okay, which color is going to be next to a different one. And I have a really difficult time with that. Sometimes I really enjoy that process. Sometimes I find it very stressful, and doing it in person would be nice because then I can like match up colors and like see them next to each other instead of me trying to like screenshot the little color swatch on the website and then screenshotting the other one, and that's what I do. But then to actually like make a decision. I also find it difficult to figure out how much I need when I'm in person in a store, because I start to panic about like, how many meters? Wait, that's in yards. Wait, so what about with the size? Then how many do I need of this? And then
okay, the yarn in the pattern is different than what I'm gonna buy, and so then the yardages are a little bit differently, and there's like there's a lot of decisions to make, and I have a difficult time doing that in person. I have a very elaborate spreadsheet of yarn, like most of the yarn that my favorite LYS here carries, and then some like more unique ones from other places. Basically like any yarn that I might be interested in using at some point. I have it in a spreadsheet. I have it linked to whatever the website was that I found it on. I have, you know, the name of it, the weight, the yardage, the meterage, how many grams, the content, and then I have it broken down by like price per meter. And so it's an easy way for me to, this spreadsheet took me ages. And I haven't updated it in a while. I noticed that the prices have increased on a lot of things, obviously, because inflation and, you know, the world falling apart. But I find it a helpful way for me to see, okay, this is how much, you know, okay, it's 10 cents per meter, or it's 20 cents per meter. Having it broken down that way so I can price out a sweater and decide, okay, do I actually want to buy the Brooklyn tweed at whatever price per meter, or do I want to substitute it with custom woolen mills, which I think is a pretty good substitute for Brooklyn tweed. You know, do I want to buy Brooklyn tweed at 15 cents per meter, or do I want to use Briggs and Little at 6 cents per meter? You know, it's like trying to make those judgment calls, like when do I want to splurge and when do I not want to. I find that easy way to compare between different yarns. Remember how I said that I have anxiety? I also have a little bit of like decision paralysis, you know? So anyways, I think I started saying all of those things because I'm trying to plan a project, trying to plan out what I'm going to buy when I'm at Farmer's Daughter Fibers so I can come home with some beautiful yarn. I'm also trying to plan what project to bring along with me because I'm kind of in the middle of things. So it's like, okay, I have my like cable blanket that's not bringing me joy, and that's like my only whip that I could actually, like, I have some like whips and time out and need to like do some math. I need to, one of them I like need to rip out. So I was like, I'm not going to do that at a knitting retreat. I need to have something that I can work on easily while I'm chit-chatting and picking up, putting down, whatever. So I'm trying to decide what I want to do. Speaking of patterns with my baby's name, I bought this. This is the Wildwood book by Marie Wallin. I love her patterns. I've never knit any of them. They're so beautiful to look at to me. And so I bought a couple of books recently. This is one, the title is also Rowan. And so I'd like to make that cowl. I have a bunch of leftover yarn from a Colorwork sweater that I did. Also Ancient Arts. It's with their Lasco Fine base, and I have lots of leftovers. And so I really like the idea about having, one of the things I love about how Marie Wallin styles her knits in the photos and stuff. It's just like how she mixes patterns together and stuff. Like, okay, this is the Samfree sweater. This is one of my favorite sweaters of hers. This is for sure gonna be something that I knit one day. But I love how she mixes the like Fair Isle with like a tweed skirt or a plaid skirt, or like this where she has the
a sweater pattern and a cowl pattern. And they look so cohesive because they're knit with similar yarn, but the patterns are different. And so it's kind of this like layering of patterns, and or like this. It's just like yeah, where I don't know. I'm not stylish, so I don't know the proper terms here, but it's like mixing patterns, and it's like, okay, that could kind of clash, but also it like totally works. It's like I just want to be this woman like in Shetland, in the hills, tending to my sheep, you know? Anyways, I have this all over knit cardigan that I made, and I really like the idea about using the same yarn, but with a different Fair Isle pattern to make a cowl to go with it. This is like so not the project for me to be working on while I'm like feeling socially awkward with strangers at a knitting retreat. But it's what I'm feeling energized about right now, so I don't know what I'll end up doing. Again, with the whole color, trying to figure out the colors, you know, Marie Wallin has a very particular color sense. How her Fair Isle patterns blend and fade together is so beautiful and precise, and I know what I want it to end up being, but I don't know how to get it there necessarily. So I pulled out all of the yarn the other night and was kind of figuring out like, okay, in her pattern she has like, you know, these kind of two contrast colors, and these colors are like, you know, the light and the dark version of a similar, you know, color family, and kind of try to figure out, match my yarn to that. But I want to swatch it before I cast on for the whole cowl. So we'll see what ends up happening there. So my husband and I got to get away for a weekend. We went to Jasper to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. We went there for our honeymoon, and we've been back a couple times to the same place, which is part of our hope when we chose to have our honeymoon there, is that we could return to it again. And yeah, it's been nice to be able to go back. And then when we stayed at a place called Alpine Village, and they have these beautiful cabins, and like some of them are really big and fancy, and some of them are just like one little like one room cabin kind of thing where like your bed is next to the kitchen. And we've stayed in both, and so on our honeymoon we'd stayed in like quite a nice one, and then when we've been back we've just stayed in like the little smaller ones. But this time we stayed in one of the fancy cabins again, and it was like right at the very end of the path, and so, you know, if we looked this way on the deck we could see other cabins, but mostly we just had this like beautiful view of the forest. Every time I went to the bathroom I like looked out the window to see if there was a black bear in the forest, because there absolutely could have been. And we didn't see any elk. We saw a couple deer, but that was it for wildlife. So yeah, we had a really nice weekend away. We didn't have a lot of plans. We mostly wanted to just be able to like relax. I brought a lot of knitting projects along. I wanted to try and finish this while I was there, which I didn't quite, but it's all I worked on. And so I like had also brought my shawl, and I had also brought the cable quilt project. Didn't work on any of them. But yeah, we like played crib and went out for supper, and Tom was the one who suggested that I like bring along like a handful of my knitwear, and like we could take some pictures in the mountains. And so we did that one day, and we went up to Pyramid Lake, which I don't know if I had actually been there before. But there's like this little island in the lake with a bridge that goes to it, and it's just little, and you can, you know, you walk around it in like 10 minutes kind of thing, this little island. But yeah, we went and took a bunch of pictures of my Stonecrop cardi, and then my Boulevardier sweater, which is my favorite sweater that I keep talking about, and then my sweater that I knit for my husband this year, which I hadn't gotten like FO pictures of yet. So we went back to the same restaurant that we went to on our honeymoon, which was kind of funny. We like made a reservation for 6:30, which to me was like late for supper. And you know, walked in, and there's like 0 people in the restaurant. Like, hi, we have a reservation. But we had told them that it was for our anniversary, and so when I made the reservation, we had mentioned that to them, and so they brought over a glass of champagne, and
She commented about like how we'd come 10 years ago, and when I found some of our pictures from our honeymoon, like turns out we sat in the exact same table, and it was just kind of sweet, right? And we went to the spa at Jasper Park Lodge, which felt very luxurious. So yeah, that was fun, and cooked, and yeah, it was a really lovely weekend away. It was, you know, we were in a hard stage of life already, and then our baby died, and life's pretty hard right now. There's a lot of things that are going on that are hard, and they were already hard, and then Beth died. It felt hard leaving our house to head out to Jasper, knowing that we were supposed to have her along with us. There's also something that feels complicated about, you know, really needing that break away from our other kids. And then feeling guilty about that because, well, I should just soak up every single moment that I have with them because life is too short and unpredictable and fleeting, and I should savor every single second that I have with my boys. And also, children are exhausting, and they are learning how to be little humans, and sometimes that's really hard, and there's a lot of big feelings for everybody all the time, and sometimes they don't sleep well, or they wake up really early, or sometimes you give them the wrong cup, and that's disastrous to them, and they have very big feelings about it, and so that felt complicated too, I guess, really craving that weekend away. Obviously, it's important for my husband and I to just like have time, just the two of us. But just, yeah, kind of this weird dynamic, right? Of needing that kind of getaway, needing some space from the kids, also really wishing that we had no space from our kids because we just want Beth to be here with us. So yeah, it just feels complicated. So that, I felt like we were able to enjoy the weekend. There was just that kind of thing that was, it's just always, I'm never away from my grief. And so just being aware about that, I guess, while we were away. And yeah, even like, are we allowed to have a good time? I don't know. Are we allowed to be happy? I'm not sure we're allowed to be happy. We should just be sad all the time. So there isn't a right answer to any of those questions. But it's just hard to know what to do with those feelings sometimes. So I had started reading another grief book recently, but I hadn't really dove into it much, and so I read it some more while we were away, and that was really good. Been really appreciating it so far. I'll put a link to that down below in case anybody else is interested. I think it's a good one, probably for, like, everybody is touched by grief in some way. Yeah, grief is a universal experience. If it's not something that has, you know, directly impacted you, it absolutely has impacted people that you are around, and that puts you in a position of being able to support that person. And people who are able to support us well makes it like an unimaginable difference. And so I think everybody should learn more about grief and find some good resources about grief. So this book that I'm reading is called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And, you know, one of the lines, like in the introduction, it's like, no, like, this really is as bad as you think it is. Like, oh, okay, thanks. Like, you know, like I've said before, we've mostly had like very, very good support from people. And honestly, I said this before, but just to say it again, it's like I really do appreciate how, like, the comments that people have made on my videos about their own grief experience, them sitting with me in my grief. I think people's comments have felt consistent with how I've been processing my grief. And so that's been really helpful for me. I have actually, most of the bad comments that I've received have been from healthcare workers, which is not great. The staff that we had in the hospital were incredible, and I am forever grateful for that. My doctor, Beth's doctor, all of the nurses that we had, social worker, we had a really good experience with that, which, yeah, I am so thankful for. I think if we hadn't had that, it just would have been this additional layer of trauma on top of a traumatic situation, of being dismissed in our, like, worst moments, right? Unfortunately, I've had that now. I've been trying to find a family doctor, and I've had a couple of bad experiences now of just, like, them responding really poorly when I tell them what happened. And the first time I was so caught off guard, I just, like, didn't even say anything. The second time it happened, I said something. She basically told me right away that I just need to think about my children. I just need to be grateful. I need to try and be happier. I need to work on my negative feelings. And I stopped her. I was like, like, no, that's not helpful for me. Like, of course I'm grateful for my children. That doesn't make it okay that Beth died. So yeah, I'm glad, I guess, that it's not, like, people who are close to it, our lives, who've been saying those things to us, because I can never have to see that doctor ever again. But also, like, they've stuck with me really hard. The first one was it was like 6 weeks after Beth died, and that one really hurt. So then the next time around, then when I was like, that was like 5 months after, and so I was a little bit more, and after having gone through that first, like, shitty experience, I was a little bit more fired up then to, like, no, I'm not going through this again. So I have since found a lovely family doctor, who is very compassionate.
And with that awkward end, because apparently the rest of my footage has disappeared into the void, please enjoy this montage of our trip to Jasper. Check me out on Instagram. Feel free to like and subscribe. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to me, and hope that you enjoyed. Bye!